Chapter 3, Why Sales. So in this chapter, I'm talking about why sales. Why are you choosing sales? Why are you even reading this workbook? Why are you even taking these classes? Why did you even apply for a sales job? Why are you choosing sales? So the first homework before you go through any more chapters in the workbook, or you go through, generally I do this in orientation, so if this was done in person, well, actually, I say orientation. I would actually do this at the second interview. But this is a question I want you to ponder. This is a question I want you to take the time for a moment to really think about. Maybe spend the night thinking about it. I always tell people when I'm going to be bringing them in, especially if they really haven't done sales before, or if they're going to be working for the company I'm with, that I won't hire them on the spot. I expect them to go home, or I request them to go home. I want them to speak with their significant other and talk about the opportunity, how it would exist, talk about the hardships, talk about the things, the efforts that you're going to have to put out, how that may affect the family, the traveling, the time away from the family, what it could do to your mind. I want you to be able to discuss that because support mechanism is important. It's very important. So having your significant other be very supportive of you, be able to push you and drive you, so when you do go into a negative mindset, or you do go into a slump where you're not selling, jobs aren't coming in, commissions aren't coming in, you don't get scared, you don't get desperate, and your support mechanism at home doesn't beat you up or tell you you're in the wrong career, you're doing the wrong position, which will only frustrate you much more. So it's important. First step. And the second part of that is for you yourself to really ponder and think, like, why am I choosing sales? You know, it's a different opportunity. How much do you really know about sales? Have you really done sales before? And is it really a path you want to go down, down that commission world? Is that something you could handle? So you really got to ask yourself, why sales? What are you going to get out of sales? Now, to tell you on one side, if you don't know, sales is one of the highest paid professions, so there is potentially a lot of income that can be made in sales. Secondary part about it, I love about the sales, is you control your income. How hard you work, how much effort you put out actually dictates and controls your income. So there's truly no limit other than maybe time that's placed on it, but you can make some very phenomenal paychecks. You can make, literally, I know people, and I have too, that have made in 1 month, sometimes even 1 week, what people, the average people out there would make in, like 4 months or longer. So it's pretty amazing the type of money you can make off of it. And then just the freedom, you have to be responsible, but the freedom that you can receive, not being stuck behind a desk or stuck in a warehouse, clocking in at 8 a.m. and clocking out at 5 and clocking out for a 30-minute lunch, and punching a time card for an hourly check that's going to get taxed like crazy, and that's the only income you have. So there's a lot of freedom, there's a lot of adventure, there's a lot of fun in it. Get to meet a lot of different people, depending on which career path of sales you take. There's multitudes of jobs out there for sales, so it just depends on what career sales path you're taking. But it's very liberating, very accomplishing. It gives you a sense, a different type of high, an excitement in the body when you're able to accomplish and close a deal or create a sale, have a customer, trust you and basically listen and do what, you've directed them to do or asked them to do. It feels really good, so that's another reason that you do sales. There's other reasons you may come up with, but these are things that you have to ask yourself. Then you need to know the other side of sales, what can happen on the frustrating side of sales. Are those things that you can handle, you can tolerate? Customer, what I like to use the word rescind, not cancellation, but a customer changes their mind. They get the cold sweats, they wake up the next day, and they decide, oh man, I don't want this item that you sold them. Or they talk to a friend or a neighbor, called a third-party kill. And that person comes in and basically frustrates them and tells them they spent too much money, or they shouldn't buy this product, or they should get other bids, or they should try looking around, do some research, find a better price. And you lose that job, and there goes all that commission that you thought you made. That can be very frustrating. Driving to customers' houses, driving very far, only to find out they didn't respect you by being at home for their assigned appointments. That can be very frustrating. People yelling at you, people telling you to get off their doorstep. Spending 3 hours with someone only to have them realize that they just wasted your time. You got other situations where you're in a house and customer's credit's bad and you can't get them approved. That could be very negative. You spend a lot of time, you think you're going to make some good money off the job, and then come to find out you can't even get them financed to purchase the product. So that could be another negative. You go into slumps, where you're not selling, you're not closing any deals, you're having struggles, and your paycheck can get decreased. Smaller and smaller and smaller, because it's what you're putting out. Your commissions is what you're making. So you can start to lose money and momentum that way. So that can be, a negative, because you've got no guaranteed income in. In fact, single-handedly, that's one of the reasons people don't go into sales, is because they don't like the idea of not having a guaranteed paycheck. So that creates the most fear. But if you're confident and you believe in yourself, you learn the program and you put out the effort, I can promise you, as long as you're doing all those things and you're following the steps that you're going to learn throughout this manual and this time with the Daily Dose of Mike Mynar, you're going to learn that, that money comes easy and often, and you won't have to worry about that. But it still is a concern, and it still is a reason. And so for me, I want you to know, why are you choosing sales? Because you are going to have to put out the effort. Whatever the effort takes is a saying that I've learned to say too, is you got to be willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. So I'll tell you why people fail at sales. They get excited. Someone told them they're going to make a bunch of money, and so they get really excited. They come in, maybe they get limited training, maybe they get a little bit more training, but they come in, they don't really have the necessary tools or the necessary mindset to really function in the sales world. They come in on this excitement and this hope that, hey, I get out of this dead-end job of making $12, $15, $18 an hour. I can go into sales where I can make $500, $600, $800, $1,000, $1,500 a day. This is exciting. So they get lured in. They come in, they're excited, they make a few sales in the beginning, but as it gets a little tougher and when the newness rubs off, they don't sell, and it gets frustrating, and then they start going broke. And as they go broke, they're not making money, and next thing you know, they're out the door, because they're not closing deals, so that company doesn't want them. They're not getting a paycheck, and they're back to ground zero. So for me, I need to know, and I want you to know, is sales the direction you really want to go? Because there's one thing that I know you have to have in sales, and it's one of the things that I strive to look for, but you have to have grit, G-R-I-T. You have to have the sheer willpower to accomplish something. You got to have it inside you as a person that you're going to stick your head to the ground and you're going to drive forward as hard as you can. It's like my little daughter when she was a baby. It was the craziest thing I saw. But instead of crawling and learning how to crawl, because her head was bigger than her body, but she would stick her head on the floor. And she started doing this early. I swear it was like 3 months old. 4 months old, somewhere in that range. I can ask my wife, my beautiful wife. But she started pushing her head, and she would push her body and bulldoze and keep bulldozing. And she would run into the couch, and she would yell out and just like, I'm going to do it, kind of frustrated anger sound, and she'd keep pushing and pushing against that couch. And I got to tell you, as time went on, and she continued doing this, eventually she started getting up, where she could start to stand, and she would push and she'd stand, and then she'd actually climb onto that couch. And then eventually as she got older, she'd climb over the backside of that couch. So ain't no mountain too high for someone to climb over if they put their mind to it. So having that sheer willpower, it's like I was digging a hole in the backyard with a pair of post hole diggers. It wasn't working. It was hard. Ground wasn't wet enough. I got 3, 4, 5 blisters on each hand. I kept digging. I actually ended up breaking the post hole digger, one of the wood posts on it, from pounding down in the ground so hard, just to go that 2 feet. But you know what? I didn't give up. I had that willpower to go that 2 feet and kept going. Even though it hurt, even though my hands bled, even though I was sweating, I did not give up. And that's the key, not giving up. And you've probably heard a lot of motivational stories. The guy that bought all that equipment got investors way back in the day to dig for oil in Texas. And he kept digging, and basically his money started running out, and he wasn't finding any oil. And the guy eventually gave up, decided he couldn't go any further. He gave up, and he was selling off of his equipment. and to like a junk man, basically all these tools and stuff. A guy that resells things. And the way the story goes, the way I heard it, I guess. So that junk man actually hired a geologist, I guess it was, and the geologist came in, did some tests in the area, and determined that about 3 feet down they were going to strike oil. So the guy that originally started only needed to go another 3 feet down drilling, and he would have struck oil. So here's this guy that knows nothing about oil, spends a little bit of money, buys a bunch of equipment dirt cheap, goes back in, digs, and hit one of the largest oil strikes way back then in the state of Texas for oil. That's just a story that's been told. I haven't really researched how true it is, but a story I've been told over the years, and I've told. You go a little bit further. You look at Colonel Sanders and KFC. I don't know the exact number, but he was turned down over 1,000-something times to try to get KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, up and running off the ground. There's a lot of stories out there of people that have done some successful things. In fact, just every successful person has failed numerous times. But each time you fail is how much closer you get. The stories about the gold. Keep digging and digging in the ground, and guy gives up. And the next guy comes along, keeps digging, and it's only 1 foot further. So it's about every inch that you're going to take. So you have to have that sheer willpower, and I want you to think about that. I want you to stop and think, how much willpower do I have? How far have I stretched myself? How far have I pushed myself? Because generally, I find out in the first 90 days, we're going to know. You're going to know in the first 90 days if you're going to pick up the program, if you're going to learn the selling process, if it's going to become natural to you, and if you're going to be able to connect with those customers. And you're going to learn if you have the willpower, the strength to continue to push forward, to keep your head to the ground and just keep pushing and not allow anything to stop you. We'll find that out. You'll find that out in 90 days. That's the make it, break it. Guys or gals, are you going to make it, or they're going to break it at 90 days? So realize that. You got to have that sheer willpower. It's got to be deep inside you, that desire. I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn sales, and I'm going to be successful at sales. And the people that do that, and they're willing to put out the effort, because effort never equals zero, they're the ones that are going to realistically make those big paychecks. I also have to tell you on the sales side, it's just like in any position or any business, sports. You got 80%, I would say roughly 80% of the team is average, so 80% of the salespeople out there are average. In most of business, they're closing maybe 25% of the business. That's 80% of the salespeople out there in the sales world. They're not strong closers. They're making $50,000 to $60,000 $65,000, depending on what sales trade they're in. But that's about 80% of the business. I think anybody that puts just a small amount of effort into sales and just puts themselves in the position, they're going to create that. But I'm training you to be better than that. I want you to be what's called a star, which would be the 15% of the salespeople out there. And the stars, they go a little above and beyond. There's certain small things, the little techniques and things that I teach that they would perform at, and their income's going to go up. They're $75,000, they're $80,000, they're $100,000 that they're making because they're putting out that little effort, and they're considered a star on their team that they're in because they're outperforming the other 80%. And then through all this, those that you have in it that are just, absolutely relentless, kind of like I was. I got the nickname Pit Bull because when I'd latch on, I wouldn't let go. The ones that really just put out every ounce of effort they can at all times, that have the most discipline, they're going to be the superstars, the 5% of salespeople out there. And like I said, you look at basketball, you look at any team's going to have a superstar. They're the ones that put up most of the points. There's maybe one player, two players on the team. That's where you get the 5% of the team. Then there's another one or two players that are the stars of the team. They're putting up decent numbers, good numbers. So there's your other 15%. And then there's your 80% of the rest of the team that are putting up, working together as a team, but, they're average points, average scores. And so that's how you have to look at it. I want you to know that part of it too. So when you decide sales, am I going to be a 5 guy? 5 gal. I'm going to be 15%er, or I'm going to fall into the 80%er category. I got to say, if you're going to be an 80%er, I probably would put this manual down and not move forward anymore, because I only want to see you be 15 and 5. But if you're okay with 18, then hey, that's just mediocre to me. That's not stepping outside of the circle of mediocrity. So I really look forward to training and working together throughout this process. But please, before you go any further, go home tonight, sit down, think about what it's going to take. Think about why you're choosing sales, why you're getting into sales, why you're inspired or excited by sales, and really tell yourself, is this what I want to do? Because if I do, I got to make 110% commitment to myself and to sales, because it becomes my new partner. And make sure your significant other is on board, and they're going to support you through it, and they're going to make the same commitment with you. And if that's the case, then come back tomorrow for chapter 4. So again, this is chapter 3. Why sales? Why am I getting into sales?